Everyone agrees that pre-produced, lifted from radio ads suck on podcasts, and that the HostRead ad is the clear winner. But is that true for every podcast? More importantly, is it true for your podcast? Hello and welcome to another podcast Pontifications with me, Evo Terra. This is going to sound a little odd, but please bear with me. It's about podcast advertising, and I've a contrary opinion. Are you ready for it? I think we put too much emphasis on the HostRead ad for podcasting. Not that I have any doubts as to the myriad case studies and the reports that have confirmed that, yes, podcasting's HostRead ads beat the pants off of just about every other form of audio advertising. From unaided brand recall to an increase in purchase intent, higher affinities and familiarities, HostRead ads are clearly superior to announcer-read ads. Or are they? Well, yes, probably they are. But only if your podcast or the podcast you work on has cultivated an intimate relationship with the listeners of the show. Now, that phrase might have sent you scrambling for a drink if you're paying the podcast is an ultimate medium drinking game, which has one simple rule I'm sure you can figure out on your own. Or when you heard me say that a moment ago, perhaps it set off alarm bells because perhaps you haven't cultivated said intimate relationship. Yes, drink again. And maybe you can't. See, this is the part of the episode where I remind you that podcasting more describes the distribution medium than it describes the content. Now, if you've been with me for a while, this will come as no surprise to you. But if you're brand new, it might. So let me state this clearly. Podcasting is not a content format. Podcasts do not and should not all sound the same or follow the same content flow. To that end, and because of that, and perhaps shocking to you, not all podcasts have a host who cultivates or even earns an intimate relationship with the listeners of the podcast. And without that intimate relationship, you might, by the way, want to pause the drinking game or you're going to get really drunk even before the sponsor break. HostRead ads just don't work as well. And because sometimes announcer ads actually work better on some shows. Now, before you brand me as a heretic, let me make my case. You see, HostRead ads work really, really well. Not because the host is reading them. And I know that sounds weird. They work really, really well because the host has developed that intimate relationship with the audience, and their audience has come to either trust the recommendations of that host, or they personally want to do something nice to help that host, like perhaps buy something that they know the host benefits from. And it's that recommendation aspect that makes HostRead ads on podcast work so stinking well. When the audience is deeply connected to the host, or at least feels they are deeply connected to the host, the audience, is receptive to receiving recommendations from that host. And so a HostRead ad is a recommendation, albeit one the host is paid to make. But that recommendation power only goes so far. And it's defined, more or less, by the domain of the topics and issues discussed on that podcast. Some examples. Would I take either Andrew's or Don's recommendations on what car I should buy? Well, sure. They both host car-focused podcasts. But would their recommendations on what type of life insurance I should buy be as effective on me? Well, probably not. But if Susie recommended a good quality pair of binoculars on her podcast, and if I was in the market for binoculars, I'd absolutely take her advice and not do any more research, because she's a trusted and avid birder. But would her endorsements of patio furniture work on me? Less so. Now, in those instances where they don't work as well, where the subject of the ad read is orthogonal to the topic at hand on the podcast, an announcer-read ad would likely be just as effective, maybe even more so, since I wouldn't be listening with my head cocked to one side wondering why the ads don't match the content. But then again, I'm weird like that. And also, I listen to plenty of fiction podcasts, right? I listen to some news shows, and I listen to straight up educational programs where there isn't a strong host. I've developed an affinity for the content that's produced, for sure, but I probably couldn't even name the host of some of those shows. So a HostRead ad in those instances isn't all that important to me. It doesn't even work. In fact, an announcer read would probably be just as good, if not even better, because it probably has all the right talking points, the research talking points inside of it, without someone having to try and make it up as they go along and pretend they've got some intimate connection that just doesn't exist. So again, if for your listeners, your podcast truly is an intimate experience, then roll on with those HostRead ads because they'll work great. But it is not, and I assure you, not every listener has to have an intimate experience when they listen to every podcast. So if that's not the case, then recognize the case studies you're learning about and you're hearing about on other shows and other newsletters, they may not exactly line up to the type of podcast you produce. So it's okay for you to do your own thing for your ad reads and your sponsor messages. So with that, I shall be back next week with yet another podcast Pontifications. Cheers!